き気の蝶になってきらめく風に乗って今すぐ君に会いに行こう余計なことなんて忘れた方がマシさこれ以上されてる時間はない何がウォーウォーウォーウォーこの空に届くのだろうだけどウォーウォーウォーウォー明日の予定もわからない現代な夢の後の何もない世の中じゃそうさ愛しい思いを負けそうになるけど静止感しないイメージだらけの頼りない翼でもきっと飛べるさ Oh my God
I'm just scared that I might have to we might get copyrighted by that song.
Okay. Then why didn't you bring it up when you posted about the song?
No, not that part. I mean, just the part where I heard the song is like, oh shit, we might get copyright strike.
You cursed.
Oh no.
Oh
I guess
no.
that's one more coin for the curse.
One more coin for the box.
There.
That's my first
But
offense.
okay, anyway, good evening everyone, and once again, welcome back to AME After Hours, UP AME's official podcast where we talk about anything and everything about anime, manga, or the community. Once again, this is Angelica.
I'm Ian.
Hi, I'm Eric.
And for today, just like the previous week, we are joined by the ACADCOM interns! Yay! So, can you guys please give a brief introduction? Just tell us your name and what's your favorite anime? Let's start with you.
I'm Barnett, and my favorite anime is My Hero Academia.
So my name is Macie, and right now, it's an anime now, so my favorite anime is V-Stars.
Stars.
My name is AJ. Favorite anime ReZero, Rembes Girl.
I'm sorry for your loss.
Condolences.
So, we'll be joined by the ACADCOM interns for this podcast. And, well, what is our podcast going to be about today? Well, Ian, explain your song choice first.
Well, considering our topic for today, actually, maybe most people wouldn't have thought of it that way, but Digimon was actually probably one of the first isekai anime that a lot of us watched as kids. I mean, technically it isn't isekai because they are thrown into another world, the digital world.
Isekai was just not labeled yet.
It's just not, labeled as such.
But for the label of isekai, let's define what isekai is first. Moe?
Huh?
Since you brought up the idea of labeling isekai, what's isekai for you?
Being transported to another world by one way or another. The most common tropes of this being done is A, dying, or 2, being summoned by a weird teleportation summoning mechanism like a ritual.
Or 3, getting hit by a truck.
That's dying.
Not dying. Dying.
Special case of dying.
Yeah, I guess
It's
the most
common.
common case of dying.
What
in
is it with
isekai
Japanese trucks?
or trains. Sometimes it's trains.
What is it with the Japan transportation system? Is it really a teleportation system?
Why not?
Penny for your thoughts. But yeah, that's basically the isekai genre.
The media is lying to you.
The media is lying to you. And if you guys notice, the isekai genre is getting popular lately. in the most recent anime seasons, there's always one or two
Yes.
isekai titles that's being adapted into an anime.
There's actually a few recurring anime series as well of isekai. So it's like there's the slime anime, there's Macie. Is it wrong to pick up girls in a dungeon? What else? There's Isekai Quartet, which is actually
A meta anime.
yeah, it's a hodgepodge of all the other isekai animes that have been mainstream over the years.
Yeah, or you can see.
I think what you said about Danmachi, I'm not sure if it's an isekai.
All right, it's not an isekai.
Yeah, it's just a normal fantasy anime. But I guess the tropes of the tropes of an isekai is carried into Danmachi, making it seem like an isekai.
Can I give a counterpoint that it's not the heroes that are getting isekai'd, it's the goddesses and gods that are getting isekai'd? Can I give that counterpoint, or is that also invalid by some other?
Fight. Because you said counterpoint, so like fight. It's fine.
I hope I can defend myself with that logic.
No, I think I kind of agree with your counterpoint there. That as long as someone is being transported to another world, it would count as isekai.
Not necessarily the protagonist.
Let me change my example na lang so we can all agree. Recreators, the anime where you don't isekai the normal people, you isekai the anime and manga people and video game people into the real world.
Recreator sounds like reverse isekai.
It's still an isekai by the standards.
Well,
Yeah, but why is isekai getting popular now? Yeah, it's popular enough to have its own podcast and its own debate about it. It's popular enough to have its own label, even though it's technically a fantasy genre most of the time. So what makes isekai popular? Like lately, these titles we've been seeing.
I think it's part of it is the idea of being sent somewhere else from
So, like,
outside of reality.
escapism.
Yeah, it's a bit.
Yeah. And then you have to consider that we are weeboos and otakus, and we have that desire to transport into the anime world. So I guess isekai is kind of the manifestation of that desire of escapism. Like, we want to go to another world. Let's make an anime, and several animes and mangas and light novels about that.
Mostly light novels.
That's such a cynical worldview that you know how bad your current world is, so you're just gonna go to another world where it's actually happier and everything is more beautiful and sparkly.
But not all isekai.
Not always. Shield hero. I guess, in a way, if it weren't for them teleporting into another world, they wouldn't have the character development that they've had in the real world. Because of the new settings, they're getting thrown into new situations that they wouldn't otherwise experience in the real world. So I guess, forced character development. No, not forced. That's a bad word.
It's more like let's just make an established modern day character and then put it into a fantasy setting.
I wonder how they thought of that, though.
I think it's just something modern out of the common trope of. I think the trope of someone being transported from a different world is already like an old thing. It's just that it's getting modernized into what we have right now by some stuff.
Okay, someone has.
I think part of the reason of that also is with role-playing games.
Yeah, because a lot of the worlds, they're games that they're transported
They're usually
to.
games.
Yeah, so I guess sometimes the fantasy genre is too broad, and then sometimes audiences would feel like I already understand the whole world building aspect of it. They would like to explore their creativity with it. So I guess that's part of the appeal of the isekai genre.
I guess it's also easier to do than a traditional transporting fantasy.
Yeah.
It's like Inuyasha and what was the other one? Fushigi Yugi. Yeah, those two, they had to explain their whole world as well. But in terms of like what we have now, you just show them, oh, you can open a level panel like this, or you can see your stats like this, and somehow people understand it more.
I'm guessing like the present isekai anime right now, it was designed to make the viewers feel as if they're in the shoes of the protagonist, being teleported into that world and learning about that world. Yeah. And then
I think that's also, if you notice, a lot of isekai protagonists are quite generic. It's because you're meant to be able to insert
shade.
yourself.
Short black hair, not it's unkempt. Short black hair.
It's not exactly a flaw, just a flaw of the genre. It seems intentional talaga, so that
like they're meant to be the normal person.
Yeah, so that you can insert
so
yourself.
that you get to feel yourself as a normal person being part of this fantasy world. But and I guess that's why it's really appealing to a lot of younger
audiences.
demographics, because if you consider they're in high school, they probably don't like studying. and they have a higher need for escapism from that monotony of high school world. And then but I guess it can cross a lot of other generations, because younger generations aren't the only one who feel the need to escape from the mundane and the terrible world. Even college students. College students.
Yeah. Aren't there some isekai that feature older protagonists, like maybe salaryman age? I didn't really watch that.
Yojo Senki was a working class adult already.
Yeah.
He was HR.
Also Slime.
Yeah, Slime was also working age already.
So isekai really transcends age groups when you think about it.
Kind of, but
Because
I guess
everybody just wants to escape.
the only time I've seen an old man person being transported to an isekai was in SAO, and he became a fisherman.
Yeah, but SAO transported everybody.
Yeah, but I guess that's the most inclusive version I've seen.
Wow, so
Usually
inclusive.
it's around ages 16 to 30 plus. That's the range of who are getting isekai. Maybe very rare, like 12-year-olds and up to 16, but no one younger than that, and no one older than that, except Digimon.
Except Digimon.
Digimon transported kids.
They were all kids. Children.
I guess the basis of isekai for being appealing is how relatable the characters and the protagonists. I keep mispronouncing that word, but who exactly are these protagonists that we're talking about that are supposedly normal and relatable? So why don't we discuss some of the common tropes that we see out of isekai protagonists and isekai series? You wanted to say something? Okay. So first off, the first trope I can think of at the top of my head is the fact that sometimes it's a loser, quotation marks, protagonist suddenly gaining an OP, getting OP in another world.
Unique overpowered ability.
Yeah, they overpowered ability. And I guess, I don't know, personally I see it as like the translation of them going from the real world where they're just this normal person, and once they get to the fantasy world, suddenly they're important to that world. Yeah, you wanted to.
Or isn't Tanya the evil kind of like that? Because he's a salaryman, if I remember, and he just goes and kills himself. But then he gets reincarnated as this kid who's...
He doesn't kill himself, he gets pushed
he
to a
gets
train.
pushed. Oh yeah, train kun. And then he dies, and then he's just like this little girl who's just super OP now.
Yeah, terrifying little girl.
He's a 12-year-old that knows how to fire a sniping rifle.
And fly.
And fly. Oh, by the way, the sniping rifle is also a nuclear missile. So, yeah, got that far. Magic.
But another thing I noticed with isekai series, it's always a harem. Well, not always. Most of the time, it's a freaking harem. I almost cursed there. Yes, saved.
I guess it's also because, for the most part, the recent isekais, they usually have male protagonists, so it's kind of, I guess, pandering to the male
Pandering to the
fantasy.
male
The
audience.
target market is obvious.
The target market is male.
And isekai, I don't know, it sounds like isekai is meant to fulfill a lot of fantasies. The uncool kid suddenly gets a cool power. The loner kid suddenly has all these pretty girls fawning over him, even though he's
Yeah, so it's a power fantasy and romance.
a romantic
Romantic
fantasy. And yeah, and there's also the fact that they do the underdog turned hero thing. But I mean, it's not strictly limited to the isekai genre when you turn an underdog into a hero. But like,
Yeah, it happens in a lot of other.
it happens a lot, and it plays into what you said earlier, a power fantasy. Suddenly, somebody normal becomes legendary in this world. So I guess I can see why it's appealing, because it's a fantasy fulfilling genre.
Yeah.
But speaking of the tropes we've listed before, do you think there are some anime series or manga series that subverts the common tropes out of an isekai anime?
Well,
There's a lot.
there are a few.
There's a few. Well, my personal favorite out of that is Rise of the Shield Hero, where at the beginning it's not an underdog turned hero, it's an underdog turned victim, turned villain, and then slowly working his way up to a hero, even though he doesn't want
I
to.
think the protagonist is kind of like the deuteragonist of his own show.
So who's the protagonist? Who's the real?
I mean, he is the protagonist, but the way he acts, it's not generally shown as like the good thing to do. He's for the first half of stuff, like he's self-serving. He always looks out for number one because he knows what could happen to him if he doesn't put down his.
Actually, that's what makes it great, because it really shows us the impact of what a fantasy world can do to a person. Because in the fantasy world, the rules of the real world does not apply anymore.
Yes.
And I don't know, even though Iwatani has really, I'm not saying bad, but yeah, he has some behavior that isn't really fit for a hero. I still like him because I don't know, he seems more of a realistic protagonist to me.
He's humane. He's
Yeah,
human.
he's
Human.
Not humane, human. He's human. I'm not sure about humane. Maybe eventually. But yeah, he is human. Like, he has his limits in terms of his morality and the way he can be patient with people.
How about you guys? Any other series you've seen subvert the genre?
Well, I mean, if we're talking about a protagonist, like real protagonist, I mean, looking at ReZero, this normal boy transported into another world, then basically his power is die.
Dying.
What a summary.
Then what I find great about this is that the protagonist is just as real as we are. He's not an overpowered guy who will basically solve all the world's problems. So with the deaths he has to endure, he eventually gets traumatized. We can see in the anime how much he suffered. Like, that's the main theme of the show, suffering. So yeah, being powerless, quote unquote powerless, because he basically doesn't have, I guess, any intervention in the current time. Because he can rewind time, but he can't do anything special in the current events.
He can only do anything a normal person can, basically.
Pretty much.
Make other choices.
So he doesn't have the OP. He doesn't have the OP power.
His only power is basically a reset button, but he can't really control.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, he can control it. He can like stab himself and then he dies and then he resets again.
The only problem is
He can trigger it, but he can't control it. There's a difference.
he can't control where he's going to return.
Yeah.
He can't return to that point in time where he will return. He can't control that. So if he chooses to die, he doesn't know when
In time,
when
he will
in
come
time
back.
he will come back. So there's this possibility that if something bad happens, if he dies,
It's
he
the
will
past.
basically he will. There's possibility that he will be too late.
Maybe it already happened.
By the time. Spoilers.
And then he tries to die again, but he can't.
Oof.
He can't go back farther than that.
Yeah, that's
I
So
see.
basically, he can rewind fate, but he still has to succumb to it at some point.
still has to do something to
There are autosaves in your save file. Something like that.
But the save was corrupted. Oh no. I can't go back farther.
It's painful, very painful.
Oh yeah, I mean, I mentioned it na, but again, Tanya the evil.
Yeah.
He's literally evil.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's manipulative. He's like, I mean, he's still super OP, but like the fact that he's not like someone you can really root for, I guess, because he just wants to kill everyone. She. But yes,
He, she.
yes.
Which is really weird because we've been talking about how isekai is a fantasy fulfilling genre. What sort of fantasy
I
is
mean, I
being
guess if
fulfilled?
you're already a bad
What did you like to
person,
know?
you can be even more
If your
bad.
fantasy is, being able to destroy stuff a la Code of Duty, I guess. If you like that, I mean, if you like your first-person shooters, you're probably just like, oh, hey, I can shoot people and not have the consequences of it because it's a war.
Let's do it.
So it's not. So probably it's not just the fantasy where you get the girls and you get the power.
Yeah, it's a darker fantasy.
It's a darker fantasy being fulfilled.
Yojo Senki submerges much of the common tropes in isekais. There's no harem because one, you're like a 12-year-old girl or a 14-year-old girl in this anime. Two, I won't say that you are an underdog in this because yes, you have magic, but everyone has magic in here, and you have the added restriction that you have to pray to be able to use magic. And the thing is, the reason why he was transported into the other world is because he didn't believe that a god exists. I mean, the V god exists. And so he calls this god being X and tries to cynically give a worldview that doesn't need a god to explain all of the things that he does. And so, yeah, the god challenged him into surviving in a world. He will give him magic, but in order to use the magic, he will have to pray to the god that he hates.
We're getting philosophical here.
It's part philosophy, part logic problem. It's just
That's a lot to unpack.
So instead of fantasy fulfilling, it's just, I don't know, a revenge ploy or something.
sort of,
Spite.
revenge plot of
An
the
isekai
god.
out of spite.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, he didn't even want to be reincarnated in the first place. He's just doing a bet with God for some reason.
I guess one anime I would count as one subverting the genre would be Konosuba.
Yes.
Because it doesn't really follow the generic isekai like formula. Like you have the protagonist having his chosen power to bring in the goddess that
Sent him there,
yeah.
But she's useless. It's like expectations versus reality.
So it's not a fucking power.
It's a burden. So I guess also like overall the Konosuba is like putting a satire on the fantasy genre.
Yeah.
Like they actually bring these tropes and show how it can be how do I say?
Made fun of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like in another light.
So it's like, well, I guess isekai has developed to a point that we can make an isekai that's a satire about isekai.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, actually, what Konosuba does, it seems to follow that formula at first. Like, oh, normal guy, he dies, then he's sent to another world as, this legendary hero that can have one OP power of his choosing. But then, as Barnett mentioned, it's a burden.
I think I'm waiting for the next isekai plot that's this person gets isekai'd and then he dies on the isekai world, so he gets isekai'd to another world. And then he tries to find a way back into the first isekai world, not to the real world. Because
Sky Matrix.
Go there.
apparently they're all connected multiverses.
One other anime this season that subverts the genre was Hatage Kemonami. It's the one where the wrestler got isekai.
Oh, that one!
Yeah,
Where he takes
apparently-
care of animals. Kind of like he makes a pet shop.
Yeah. Yeah, apparently he was summoned as a hero to slay all the demon beasts, but apparently the wrestler is an animal lover, so he sees that goal as a bad thing, and basically he goes against his summoner, which is a princess.
And opens a pet shop.
Of Demon Beast.
Wait, that sounds sounds kind of wholesome. It's weird.
Yeah, I mean,
Wholesome is a word I never thought I would associate with isekai.
Isekai.
Actually.
But well, since we're on the subject of what's a common isekai and what's a subverted isekai, what would you consider a good isekai anime or manga in the first place?
We already have some common tropes that we use in isekai, and it's not bad to use common tropes. I mean, they're there to establish easily what kind of story we want to make, and if used right, they can make a story still entertaining and yet also understandable to people that are not into the isekai genre but would understand what kind of elements would make such a story. Although, yeah, the problem with using tropes is when they're used badly. I guess one such example of this was the very start of what was the isekai from last season? The one where
What happens?
huh?
What happens?
No, let's just use smartphone because smartphone also uses a lot of the tropes. Smartphone had a harem, although it's not entirely explored why he would have a harem in the first place. It just ends up that the girls like her for some reason. So the harem is unjustified, and then his magic comes from his smartphone. I guess you can count that as a magic item by God's standards. But then again, it's also not developed further. You could have done that. The smartphone needs to have a battery supply, so you can explore how they will find a reliable source of energy for it. Or you could have shown that it had some viruses that carried over to the other world that could be transformed to. I mean, basically, Isekai Smartphone had a lot of the common tropes that would make an isekai fantasy. The problem is that was not those tropes were just put there.
For the sake of being labeled
Yeah.
as an isekai.
Yeah.
Could have
Because
been
they-
developed more.
And they could have developed more into their own ideas that could have been explored more by the person who made the story. Unfortunately, they're just there to be there, just to make an isekai.
So I guess it's not enough to have the elements of an isekai to consider it good. You actually have to use the elements well. Yeah.
Yeah, so seeing that there are way too many isekai right now, it's kind of hard to say what a good isekai is using the common tropes and the common formula for it. So for me, I think what makes a good isekai is how it subverts the genre well, and I guess how it uses I guess you can also use the common formula, but how to use it to its fullest potential, I guess, to really bring out the story and to further develop the characters in that story. Because what I've seen, on what I see in the isekai right now is that it follows the very same development pattern of the protagonist, like. The guy gets transported, gets OP power, gets harem, then suddenly starts to battle this boss, then now he's the hero. Then it's just it just needs uniqueness.
It's spice.
Yeah,
Needs
that's the
spice.
specific
Spice.
thing. Like, what sets apart the specific isekai from
Yeah,
other things?
exactly. Because many of isekai right now are following
The
what is
same
common.
formula.
Yeah.
We're oversaturated with so many isekai that it's hard to find something special. Kinda like Filipino telenovelas, now that I think about it.
Yeah, they
Let's
have
save it for another podcast.
I'm gonna have to add up to that. Like, I guess I see two things about good isekai. One of it is the uniqueness, the how are they adding up to the anime. Like, for example, there's the like the one I mentioned, the wrestler isekai, and then like basically how they're trying to spice up just the regular format, or the other way is basically just pushing out like a proper I guess I would call it a playthrough of the isekai. Like one example of which I enjoyed was Macie Retry.
Oh.
So it follows actually a developer of a game being transported to his own like a clone of his own game. So
Interesting.
so his power is kind of like he is an administrator.
Oh, it's kind of like how Kirito's a beta tester, so he knows the format of.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And so it basically goes out like trying to control the game all over again.
I would like to add up to what I said earlier is that I guess an example of a good isekai is No Game No Life. Even though it uses, I suppose you could say that it uses the same formula but the thing is that they're not OP per se. They're, I guess you could say, geniuses, and they use that as their weapon rather than having an OP powers. So it's good. It's a good type. I guess it's a breath of fresh air from usual isekai, because even though it uses the same formula, it's still unique. There's still something new about it, which makes it good.
What's actually good about it is that they have the ability as innate instead of being given to them by some god. Even though they did gain access to the world by a god as well. But yeah.
So it's something they already have instead of something that was bestowed upon them.
Yeah, and then I think actually from what you mentioned in No Game No Life, one good thing about isekai that are considered good, one thing that they really do well is the world building, because you're transported to a whole other world.
It's actually a very good world.
So if you really establish what that world is like, the rules it follows. So like No Game No Life is one example of that, where everything is determined by games, and how exactly they're determined by games is explained really well, and how all the races have adapted to these rules. And then actually another example would also be Log Horizon. Like the format is actually just an online game, but then the way it builds its world, the lore around things in the online game. So for example, they managed to have an explanation for what HP and MP are. Like it's not just your mana points, not just your health points. It's your HP is basically the health of your body, then the MP is the health of your mind. Then they even managed to incorporate that into how to resurrect someone.
So given all of that, given we actually name drop a lot of titles. Even I'm overwhelmed by how much isekai there
I was
is.
actually hoping to mention Mondai Jitachi no isekai Karakuri desu.
But okay. Well, personally for me, I really don't watch a lot of isekai because I'm not big on fantasy. I like my anime real life. So for someone like me who's not used to isekai, I
Like
guess
your voice real.
I like my voice kinda real.
2.5.
2.5, but not like 2.5 in another world. I like it in the same world that you would count our world in. But like, I don't know, for someone like me, what can you say would be a good entry-level isekai for newbies and beginners?
Well, since we retroactively added Digimon as an isekai, I would recommend Digimon.
Why?
For one, you're not going to be starting off with a harem or OP powers or anything like that. But you are going to be starting with the premise that these are kids from the real world that are transported into another world.
Okay.
Your main premise is isekai worthy, even though you don't use any of the common tropes. Yeah, I mean it's not specifically Digimon Adventure. I don't think Digimon Frontier would count as. Does Digimon Frontier count as an isekai?
I think Digimon Frontier would.
Digimon Frontier would, but Data Squad would not.
I'm not sure. I don't think I watched Data Squad.
Anyway, so yeah, Digimon Adventure, and these are kids, so you would have to put yourself in the perspectives of kids. And you would, I guess, putting yourself in that perspective, you would understand why they would do the things they would do. So,
So if I want to feel
Yeah.
like a kid again,
yeah.
I'm
Or
so tired of being an adult, guys. You have no
that
freaking idea.
you can also reminisce with the anime, and what's this? It can actually let you explore a mindset that is not your own, instead of like letting yourself be put into the shoes of a different character. Na is very generic and does not exactly have its own agenda. It's like just like getting swept by the story.
Yeah, it's also a more wholesome take on the isekai genre because it's really just about the adventure and friendship.
And the world getting destroyed if you don't save it.
Well, wholesome out the window. Trauma.
Why did you have to end it like that? You lulled me into a sense of wholesomeness.
Well, it's wholesome if you don't think about the dark Digimon that would try to destroy the world if you don't stop them. And there's also angst in it because it's a shonen anime. But
What?
yeah,
The shonen anime doesn't have to have angst.
Aside from Digimon, what are your personal recommendations of isekai series?
new ones, old ones.
New ones, old ones, future ones.
I guess if I won't really recommend this to weebs, but if you just started watching anime and you wanted to get into isekai, I would recommend Kenja no Mago, Wise Man's Grandchild. I think it's quite cringy since I've already watched way too many isekai. But if like 15-year-old me watched this, I would be blown away. As personally, I really like how they animated it. Because I like isekai I just generally like magic circles. I really like how I really like how they animate it, especially if it's really well animated.
You can totally tell the budget of an anime by the budget in its magic circles.
Well then.
I mean, I guess I'm sorry I've been coughing so much.
It's okay.
But like,
You can do it.
well, I mean, I don't watch isekai, but the first one I ever watched was like Sword Art Online again. It's like it's easy to understand, I guess, and it was like during the time I think isekai wasn't as big as it was. I think, yeah, and it was like a good entry level into it. I'm like, oh, this kind of concept is kind of cool. Like you're into it in a different world, and it's a world that's relatable then to like, I mean, it's a game world.
And it's pretty real.
Yeah.
Die.
Yeah.
And we're back to making wholesome things start.
To be honest, SAO
was never wholesome.
was actually a good entry level anime to isekai. The problem is when you try to just go more into SAO, like into season 2 and all that stuff,
You can stop at season 1.
show its problems. Yeah,
Then maybe continue
season
Alicization.
1 and Mother Susario. You have to watch Mother Susario because the storytelling of that was really great.
Well, true. Mother Susario.
But yeah, it's just that it has its problems with the consistency of all the what's called information that you get about this story. I mean, not the information they show you, the information they don't show you. Like,
Actually,
yeah,
there's so many questions.
this game, like, why does it work this way? How did it get to be allowed to activate this way? It's like, yeah, there's gonna be questions if you put it into a real life perspective, but in terms of like showing a snippet, a small sliver of what the isekai genre can do, it's a good way to show it. It shows potential.
I guess I would go around the Sword Art Online and say like a good entry level would be the alternative, which is Yongil Online. Because personally I liked it better than SAO. So because of the world building of how they actually can live in real life while also living in the game world. So because of that, people can actually play the game for what they wanted to achieve that power of fantasy. And so
That actually reminds me of another anime called Axel World.
How could we forget that?
This counts as an isekai, right? I mean,
It's in the same universe as well.
yeah, it's in the same universe as well.
I can already tell we're gonna recommend it considering the chain reaction that happened when you said the title.
Yeah, absolutely. It's probably the first isekai I've seen, and I love it so much that I guess that started the chain of watching anime.
And in
In
terms of
general.
characterization, it actually has really, really good characterization because people have problems, people have aspirations, people have fights with other people because of those problems.
Betrayal.
Yeah.
And friendship.
Yes.
And love.
Yes. And you can understand all of these in the aspect, in the viewpoint of them being teenagers that are still trying to figure out their own emotions and everything. It's like,
And then the world becomes an outlet for all those emotions.
but it's still a fantasy world where you are given a unique power to yourself that you can use to change the outcome of whatever thing you want to change.
Well, I guess that's how Axel World also subverts the genre. Cause like I forgot the name of the main character, but
Haruyuki, yeah.
Haruyuki. Yeah, he's OP. His power is considered almost OP because it's very rare to get. And then at some point, okay, this is spoiler, but you should have watched it already because it's that good. But Haruhi, I mispronouncing his name, but basically MC's powers get taken away, and the next half of the series is him trying to live his life without those powers.
Without that OP power.
Yeah.
And trying to stop the person that stole it from wreaking more havoc.
From destroying your life.
Yeah, destroying everyone's lives. He's getting more powerful and more maniacal.
But since we're on the subject of main characters and protagonists, who's your favorite protagonist? Well, I already said mine. It's the guy from Excel World, and I already ranted about Iwafuni from Shield Hero earlier.
I mean,
Favorite protagonist.
as a person that doesn't really watch isekai, I mean, I really like Tanya, or like, what was his name before? But yeah, plus I don't know, I really like when it's kind of like not good characters, essentially, like evil characters, and I don't know, I like the way her face is animated when she like loses it, I guess.
The art style's very nice with that.
Yeah, Tanya the evil.
So also to add to that, another protagonist of Isekai Quartet, Subaru Natsuki.
We already know how much you love Subaru.
I just really love the series. I like how human he is, which is unusual from the usual protagonist. He in the start of the series he's sane, then in the middle he's insane, then he gradually gets better somehow. But I like how the story takes. Basically, the story with Subaru really takes you to an adventure of getting to know the world they live in, getting to really know the motives of the characters. Because season 1 really just touched the surface of the series. There's so much more behind the scenes. And yeah, I like how human he is. He's not OP.
How about everyone else? Who's your favorite protagonist?
I tend not to really like the protagonists themselves in Isekai, but I guess if I had to pick one, I'd like Kazuma Sato from Konosuba. just because of how funny he is, really. And then how his general situation is he's surrounded by all these crazy, useless people. And then he's just there, like 100% done all the time. It's relatable.
For me, I guess it's either Naofumi Iwatani
Yes. I love it.
because of how realistic he goes
yeah.
on his isekai adventure and basically how the world building has treated the world.
Yeah.
And another would be I forgot his actual name, Slime.
Slime.
Rimuru.
Yeah, Rimuru.
Why?
Rimuru Tempest.
Because of his overall goal in the isekai world, like his ambitions to do, he's not really trying to come back to another world. He's just trying to live it as it is.
So his end goal isn't really to come back home.
Just to live in that.
He's accepted that he's dead on the other world.
Yeah. Here we go with that again.
Oh, okay. So I like this character more for the reasons of his voice actor, because he's voiced by Takuma Terashima. Okay, so special mention is yes, Rimuru Tempest, because before Rimuru died, the salaryman was also voiced by Takuma Terashima. But this is actually voiced by Takuma Terashima, which is Shiroe from Log Horizon. And another reason why I like this character is because back in that time, I was still playing MMORPGs and I really like playing cleric class characters, healing class characters. So that was the kind of playstyle that I wanted to emulate, that kind of tactical playstyle that wanted to make sure that everyone can stay alive because you are able to find a way to make them all stay alive. And you executed it very well. And that's why I also like Shiroe's character, because he embodies it so much in the way he thinks and the way he strategizes things and the way he interacts with people. But the thing is, I can't be that kind of calculating kind of person because
He's OP, but he's not.
yeah.
But well, since we already talked, yeah, we went back to the past a lot with a lot of old isekais who have already finished their run, isekais who don't have a season 2 yet. Shield Hero, hello. But like, let's go to the isekai that we have now. The fall 2019 isekai. Do you guys know what the series? What those?
Wait, am I
series are?
watching any of them?
We're just,
Sure, I am.
There's the overly cautious hero.
I know, I'm not watching that.
there's this one, I can't remember the name, but like they're high school students and they're all like prodigies and then they get isekai to this world.
Yeah, Jesus haven't.
They just have easy in another world.
In another world as
I
well.
forgot about it.
I haven't watched it.
Oh, yeah, but yeah.
But I know about Overly Cautious Hero, and I find that absurd, what's it called? That absurd idea very interesting, because the protagonist is no longer the hero itself, it's the person who summoned the hero. So you get a new perspective in the isekai genre.
Another appeal is that the one who summoned the hero is radiating aqua energy.
She's radiating. But she's not really useless, she's semi-useless.
She has some use, basically.
Yeah, she has some
but
use.
not quite.
She cannot die, and she can fire some kind of light magic spells, I guess. But yeah, she cannot die, so I guess she can use as a meat shield.
So she actually does something aside from just, like throw water around or something.
Yeah, or purification.
What about Sao? Isn't Sao also this season?
Oh, I guess I forgot that.
We forgot about
I forgot you could consider it an isekai.
Because it's technically no longer an isekai if you're gonna be staying in the world forever.
I guess.
No, but in a way,
Yeah, and it still had the premise that it started in the real world.
and actually, starting this season, it became isekai for a few more people. Like Asuna is already going
They
in.
got ported in.
Yeah, Asuna went in as an OP character, although she hasn't been shown inside yet. And then on the villain side as well, there are real people on the outside who went into the game world as villains, as the
Why?
Dark Emperor and his Dark Knight.
Is this for research?
No, because they want to extract a certain person, Alice, from the game world. So, but they couldn't access her from the outside, so they decided to go into the game world and then access her from there directly.
And then they're gonna put her in a synthetic body of some sort, I guess.
They're kind of gonna extract her soul from the game and do something with it. Spoilers.
I'm confused.
Yes.
Then again, it's how.
But yeah, the latest episode of Sao got weird. Even for people who were watching it from the first episode of Alicization, we're all like, what's happening?
What's happening?
Am I even watching Sao? I thought I was watching Sao, not Soul Eater.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, I think they're using Alex as a weapon for more.
Yeah, the whole point of the game world, spoilers. But yeah, it was explained in the first season pa naman of Alicization, so it's not this season. But basically the whole point of the whole game world of Underworld being there is that they want to create a bottom-up AI. So an AI that can think and feel as a human and that they can use for battle to pilot like machines for them. So the problem they actually ran into is that the AI in the world weren't really capable of killing each other, killing other humans.
And then
suddenly there was this one AI that she didn't really kill people. It's just that she managed to deviate from the set rules in the world.
I am overwhelmed by all this information as a newbie to Isekai. Well, probably not a newbie. I didn't realize Axel World was Isekai. So I've watched 2 series, Axel World and Shield.
But yeah, Sao Alicization got complicated. And it got weird, so weird.
So, yeah, we talk a lot about Isekai anime and manga, what makes it good, what makes it bad, its common tropes, some personal recommendations, and we realize Isekai is really overwhelming. I'm very
In the
overwhelmed.
short time that we have called it an isekai, there are actually a very vast majority of topics that we can cover about it.
Yeah. We just analyze Isekai as a genre. And I guess it's nice that it's fantasy fulfilling, but sometimes you gotta rein in the fantasy and give it a dose of reality, man. That's what makes great Isekai great. It's not just about the fantasy world, but its connection to the real world.
That's what gives Isekai season 2.
It's what gives the isekai a point. Like, why do you even have to make your fantasy world an isekai in the first place?
Why not just set it in the fantasy world in the first place?
Yeah. But, well, coming from someone who doesn't really like Isekai a lot, well, thank you for the recommendations. Yeah, I guess that's what I really want out of Isekai. I don't want Isekai that follows the formula. I want something with a spice earlier, something that subverts the formula.
Oh, I was wrong. I shouldn't have put Digimon as an entry level thing. It's a after your entry level thing.
Really?
Like your second yeah, because it's 104 episodes long.
That's a long
It's
entrance.
like watching Shugochara twice.
I don't know what that is.
Sorry.
But yeah, well, yeah, that's it. That's everything you need to know about Isekai. Well, not everything. Some things, but a lot of what you should consider before you go into the world of Isekai that takes people into another world. Woo! So yeah, that marks the end of our podcast somewhat. But before we close, I'd like to get the usual updates from you guys. Interns, if you've been listening to the podcast, we've been doing goal updates towards the end. You go first.
I haven't been studying as much as I would like, but then at least when I did go to Japan, I tried to practice my Japanese as much as
Yeah,
possible.
Ian went to Japan. That's why he wasn't present for the Yaoi podcast. It
Oh well,
saddened him.
pros and cons, the things you sacrifice.
He got a practical experience about talking in Japanese.
Yeah, but actually, learning. No,
Subtitles.
no, there are no subtitles in Japan. Don't expect. Well, there were subtitles in like if you're going on a train, like
There were some subtitles.
there were some subtitles. Because at first the train station name is in kanji and then it becomes hiragana and then English.
What's
So that, ayun lang,
katakana?
yun lang mostly.
I thought it was katakana.
No, hiragana. Because it's all Japanese names. Like Ueno.
How about you? How's the voice acting?
Yeah, my current project is making a Tagalog version of Fuyu no Hanashi. It's I'm working
Whoa.
on the first one right now. I'm trying to not base it too much on the English translation trying to think about how I understand Japanese lyrics as well. And yeah, I'm trying to change all of the mentions of snow into our version of it here in the Philippines. Philippines, rain.
Rain.
Chapter 4 of my thesis, guys. We're revising it. My thesis defense is in 2 weeks, so I'm gonna disappear for the next few podcasts.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, Rip. Send off. Send off talaga to. No. But how about you guys, interns? Did you recently achieve a goal you want to share with us?
Not really a goal, but like with the missions, like regarding like the app process. I mean, I've been doing stuff again, like because I went into like this stalemate, like a stagnant phase because of ACADS, and now I can actually do stuff. Good
Nice.
for you.
Yeah, same with me because this week has been very, very busy. It's very
Hell week?
difficult. It's pretty much.
It's helping every week.
Yeah, because I've been.
Well, it's Hell Week every week after the first 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Well then,
Yeah,
you're not wrong.
Hopefully now I'll have time to do missions and hopefully watch anime. I guess.
Good luck with that.
There's a lot of new ones.
Yes, there are.
My week hasn't been that much productive, but I guess I've just tracked my tambay hours. So I'm already at the 25.
It's so fast.
One down, one down. One thing down.
Good job, guys. So yeah, you've heard all of our updates. Yay! Just cheer. We need to sound happy.
Oh no.
We need to fake happiness until it becomes real, alright?
Fake it until you make it.
So yeah, that marks the end of our podcast. Thank you for listening. Once again, this is UP AME. This is AME After Hours, our official podcast about anything and everything about anime and manga. This has been Angelica.
And I'm Ian.
Hi, Eric.
Barnett.
Macie.
And AJ.
And yeah, that marks the end of our podcast. Thank you for listening. As usual, like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to comment about Ian singing, hi, Miss that commented previously. If you want to recommend us topics for the next semester, if you want to recommend us songs you want to hear us sing, just comment them down below and we'll read it.
You can also mention more isekai anime you would want to
Yeah,
recommend.
we'd like to hear from you. If you guys have your own recommendations about isekai anime, if you guys have favorite protagonists, if you don't like isekai anime, come fight us. Just kidding.
You don't like isekai anime. I don't understand what you're trying to say here.
Oh my god.
Not fight. Engage us in academic discourse. Yes. Not
It's fighting, but with brain cells.
Do we have brain cells? But anyway, yeah, thank you for listening, and that's the end of our podcast. See you next week.
Bye.